Hey guys, so I have been wanting to make a tutorial series for the Nightbird, and this is the first part covering settings and sensitivity. I currently plan to make two more, one focused on game sense and survival, and one more talking about mechanics and how to improve at them. Before we hop in, here's a small disclaimer. I myself play on mouse and keyboard, and some stuff mentioned will only apply to mouse and keyboard players. However, most of what I'm talking about will be universal to any input method. Let's kick this off by talking about rifle aim. Rifle aim is a keybind configuration for mouse and keyboard players. By default, the helicopter yaws when you press A or D, and rolling is controlled by your mouse. This mimics how aircraft are usually controlled. The throttle control is coupled with yawing, and pitching is coupled with rolling. There's a much more intuitive way to control your helicopter with a mouse and keyboard though, and it also eases the transition from just playing a normal FPS to flying a helicopter in a battlefield game. Yaw and roll are basically switched, so that you instead yaw with your mouse and roll with A and D. This will mean that your aim at a helicopter is done in the same way as you would aim a rifle with your mouse. Many people also fly inverted, and you can use rifle aim with inverted controls too, although I'd personally recommend to fly non-inverted with this control scheme, as this will make the transition from normal aiming to aiming with a helicopter easier. This is completely a preference thing though, and if you're already used to flying inverted, it may well be the better solution for you. What I would argue is not pure preference, but is actually a bit more optimal, is using rifle aim over the standard keybinds. While you absolutely can achieve good aim and be a very good pilot with the default key bindings, I think that rifle aim is objectively a bit better than the default settings. It should be common sense that you can achieve smoother and more accurate aim with a mouse than with just keys, and while you could get really good aim with default key bindings in previous battlefields, the physics in this game don't lend themselves well to aiming accurately with keys. This is the main advantage of rifle aim. Default key bindings instead have the advantage that they can be a bit faster to maneuver with, as you can instantly start turning at full speed, whereas with rifle aim you would have to accelerate your hand and mouse first. You also would not encounter the problem of running out of mousepad space or needing to stop moving for a moment while you reset your mouse. All these cons for the rifle aim setup can be alleviated by setting up secondary keybinds for yawing. With this, you have the advantage that rifle aiming gives you, but without any of its cons. I personally use shift to yaw left and space to yaw right for that purpose. This allows me to, for example, when I'm doing a 180-degree turn, hold shift for a moment in the middle or towards the end of the turn and use that time to reset my mouse. Then I will have turned just as fast as I would have with the default keybinds and have my mouse in the middle of the pad ready to aim or move some more. So if you want to use default key bindings, go ahead, you can be very good with that setup. But if you want the most optimal way to fly the Nightbird, try out these keybinds and get used to them in a portal lobby or the co-op mode. It should not take more than a few hours to get the hang of flying again, and your aim will likely already be better than before, depending on how good your mouse control is in general. There are a few other settings that I would recommend changing. You want your vehicle third-person field of view maxed out to allow for as much awareness as possible when flying. You also want your minimum view distance for air vehicles at 300 for the same reason. You should turn the helicopter control assist off as it interferes with aiming. And you might also want to turn ADS field of view off. Turning this setting off allows you to actually zoom in with the helicopter. Vehicles should have a separate instance of this setting, but that's just not how it is at the moment. So what this setting does is that when you're on foot and aim down your sights, if it is off, and even if you only have iron sights or a 1x scope equipped, you will zoom in quite a bit. But if it's on, your field of view will only change a tiny bit and stay very close to whatever on foot field of view you have selected. So it follows that if you only fly the Nightbird and want to occasionally zoom in, you turn it off. But if you like this setting for on-foot gameplay, you can make do without zoom in a helicopter, or you can change it every time you fly. Lastly, there is the uniform vehicle aim setting. This will affect your sensitivity while being zoomed in and is therefore not very important for the Nightbird. I would just match it with whatever you're using on foot, and if you don't know what to use on foot, turn it on and set the coefficient to 0. That's a safe bet. Okay, so these were all the settings that are not pure preference. I am also going to show you my other keybinds, but please don't copy them. These are probably a bit odd to you, and I only selected them based on my own habits. Just use keybinds for your flares, repair, the different cameras, and so on that you are comfortable with and that you can reach quickly. Now let's talk about sensitivity. There are two different sensitivity sliders that will affect how you aim with the helicopter. The most important one is your vehicle aim sensitivity. You can see this as your normal sensitivity, but just for vehicles. This is the sensitivity that controls your CM360, or in other words, how much you need to move your mouse to turn a certain amount. Here you will want to, just like with your on-foot sensitivity, find a balance between being able to move quickly and being able to aim accurately. As a baseline, you can place your mouse in the middle of the mousepad and then find a sensitivity with which you can turn your helicopter by 180 degrees just before reaching the edge of your mousepad. If you are okay with using shift and space a bit more for your turns, you can choose a lower sensitivity to make accurate aiming easier. If instead you want to have an easier time to quickly maneuver your helicopter, you can go higher. Sensitivity is pure preference, just don't completely overdo it in either direction. If you want a starting off point, I use 1600 dpi and 15 vehicle sensitivity. I think this is somewhere in the middle between slow and fast. Now in this game there is another sensitivity slider that will affect your aiming with the helicopter, the aircraft control sensitivity. And it will not only affect your mouse, but also the keys with which you either yaw or roll depending on your keybinds. If you have, for example, 100% aircraft control sensitivity and you're using the rifle aim control scheme and then you press either A or D, your helicopter will roll quite a bit from just a short press. So technically, for finer control over your rolling, you would actually want to turn this down. However, I would always recommend to max out the aircraft control sensitivity, as it also has a big impact on how you aim with your mouse. Namely, the higher the aircraft control sensitivity, the quicker your helicopter will react to small mouse movements and therefore allowing you for much more reactive aiming. This makes small corrections feel more like aiming with a rifle compared to aiming with a helicopter that has a capped max speed that it can move at and therefore also aim at. This is a trade-off well worth losing a little bit of the fine control over your rolling for. Video is over now, but I'm gonna go through all my other settings quickly in case anyone is curious about any of them. I hope I could help you and thanks for watching.